Welcome everybody to part 2 of the QuickBooks Online Fundamental series. Today we're going to be talking about setting up your firm's books or the books for your clients, depending on what you're doing. So we're going to be talking about setting up the books in QuickBooks Online. My name is Michelle Long. I am a CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship. I'm the owner of Long for Success, and I've had my own practice for over 20 years now. And I first started teaching QuickBooks in 1999 locally, and then I joined the Intuit Trainer Writer Network in 2007, and I'm thrilled to have had the privilege to teach accountants and bookkeepers about QuickBooks all across the U.S. and Canada. I've got to go to Australia and London, and I just really love helping others learn about QuickBooks, so I'm glad to have you guys joining me today. Also, I'm the author of 5 different books available on Amazon, one in particular that you might want to check out. If you're new to QuickBooks Online and just learning it, my son, who's also a CPA now, he and I co-authored the QuickBooks Online Practice Set. That gives you more practice entering transactions, so if you want to check that out, it's on Amazon along with all the others. Also, I'd invite you to join me for the QB Power Hour webinars. So if you want to write that down, QBPowerHour.com. That's a free webinar series that Hector Garcia and I do every other Thursday. We'd love to have you join us for those. It is eligible for free CPE, and we usually talk about QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online, or some third-party apps or practice management topics. So that's enough about me. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're covering in this webinar series. In the Fundamental webinar series, it is intended for people who are either brand new to QuickBooks Online or relatively new to QuickBooks Online. Part 1 we had last week, and we went over talking about QuickBooks Online Accountant. That's for us, accounting professionals, accountants, and bookkeepers who are working with multiple clients. And we talked about managing our clients with the client dashboard. We talked about adding team members, accessing our Pro Advisor portal, and all of that information. That recording is available. If you missed that one and you'd like to go back and watch that, you can do that. Then today we're going to talk about setting up your firm's books and your client's books, because it's the same process when you're setting up the books. So we're going to talk about setting up this company settings and getting things started and working with your chart of accounts and products and services, setting up a bank feed, setting up payroll, and some of those things. Now, tomorrow in part 3, we're going to talk about managing your books, and we're specifically going to talk about the workflow, like the sales workflow for money in and money out, entering invoices, receiving payments, making deposits, sales receipts. Then we'll also talk about the purchasing and expenses aspect with money in with the sales and money in, and then money out with our vendors and our purchases. So we'll talk about entering an expense or a check or bills and making those bill payments and all that. We'll also talk about other aspects of managing your books like reconciling, and we'll mention also the QuickBooks apps that are available to help you to understand a little bit more about that. So I hope you can join us again tomorrow for part 3. Now, as I mentioned previously in the first webinar, this fundamentals training is one step in kind of a roadmap of training that's available for you. After the fundamentals training, I would encourage you to do the next one, which is the certification prep. Notice the fundamentals is 7 hours and the cert prep is only 5 hours. The cert prep is kind of like a review of the fundamentals and a review of all the things that you need to know for that exam to help you get certified. And then once you're certified, I encourage you to start working on the advanced cert. And if you're not quite ready for the advanced cert yet, at least you might want to have access to those training materials, because those are good resources when you're working with your clients. I showed how to access all that in part 1 of this webinar series, so you might want to check that out. Now, the CPE process for today, we are going to be doing polling questions today. We're going to have 4 poll questions throughout the hour and a half today, and you'll need to answer those polling questions in order to get the continuing professional education credit. This webinar, if you stay the whole time and answer the poll questions, is eligible for up to 1.5 hours of CPE. You need to allow about 3 weeks after today to get those CPE certificates emailed to you. All right, so make sure you're paying attention and answering those poll questions when we come up for those. All right, so here's our learning objectives. Again, we're going to talk about using your books. We mentioned that a little bit last time. We're going to talk about setting up and things like that. So that's our learning objectives. Let's go ahead, though, and get on into QuickBooks and start talking about setting up QuickBooks and using these settings and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and also, before I get into QuickBooks, there is a supplemental guide. You guys should have the link to that in your GoToWebinar toolbar. That supplemental guide will give you details and more information about all the stuff that I'm going to be showing you, because I'm not going through slide by slide here. I'm going to go pop into QuickBooks Online and show it to you over there. So I'm going to go ahead and get into QBO, and I am in a sample company called Craig's Design and Landscaping Services. I mentioned to you last time how you could get into this. If you're in QuickBooks Online Accountant with your client dashboard, if you click on the green, or I'm sorry, the gear up here on the top green menu bar, or the top green bar, that gear, you'll see where it says Sample Company. Sample Company. That's how you could open Craig's Design and Landscape and play around with it. Now, don't try to do exactly what I'm doing today, but if you want to, kind of look around and play around in this, this is a great place to do it in Craig's Design. So we're going to talk about the setup process and things like that. Last time we talked about how you can convert to QuickBooks Online with that conversion tool that will convert your desktop files into QuickBooks Online for you. Once you've got the QuickBooks company set up or converted, and again, we kind of talked about that last time, next step is you're going to want to go through and customize the settings. In QuickBooks Desktop, this was called Edit Preferences. But in QuickBooks Online, it's the company settings. So to do this, we're going to click on the gear in the upper right corner. So click on the gear, and over here where it says Account and Settings. Account and Settings. And again, this is kind of like Edit Preferences on QuickBooks Desktop, but this is our account and settings. We'll want to go through and customize things for our client. So for example, under company name, we might want to go out here and pull in the company logo. If you have a different company name versus a legal name, you'd want to put in there their EIN or their social security number if they're a sole proprietor. Which tax form do they file? This is especially important if you're going to be using ProConnect Tax Online, so that you can map the lines of the chart of accounts to the tax lines and just have it flow directly over there. Also, you may have set up the type of industry when you set up the client subscription, contact info, the address information, and then also the marketing preferences. Do you want to be able to get emails from Intuit? And so then we would go into our sales settings, and I'll tell you what, before I get into the sales settings, I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll here. What is your familiarity with QuickBooks Online? Go ahead and answer that poll question for me so I can kind of see where you guys are at and kind of know who we've got listening in today. So I'll give you about a minute or a minute and a half to answer that. So if you could go ahead and do that. Let's see. Let's see if I got some questions here. Somebody's having the audio problem. Somebody's saying, why can't I listen to this on the computer? You can. If you click on audio, if you click on the GoToWebinar toolbar where it says audio, you can choose to use your computer instead of calling in. So that's up to you. So right now you can't see my screen. You're only seeing the poll question, Dan. I'm allowing people time to answer the poll question, and I'm answering some verbally. So go ahead and answer that poll question. We've already got 93% of you voted. That's super. So I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds. Is QBO the same program as QuickBooks Cloud? Stu, QuickBooks Online is in the cloud. It's a cloud-based accounting system. So QuickBooks Online is a cloud-based accounting program, okay? All right, can you use Pro Desktop instead of Pro Online? I'm assuming you're talking about tax, because I had mentioned Pro Tax Online. That is an online platform. It doesn't integrate with the desktop. There are ways that you can export the trial balance. If you're using Pro Series or Lacert, you might want to check out QB training events for a webinar on some of that as well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll question. Thank you guys for answering that. And I'll go ahead and share the results with you. 32% of you are fairly new. You haven't used it very much. 23% have only worked with QuickBooks Desktop. So about 55% of you are pretty new to QuickBooks Online. So that's great. Another 27% have poked around it a little bit, and 18% work with clients online. All right, very good. Thank you for answering that new poll question, first poll question. I appreciate that. All right, let's go back and talk about our account and settings. And now we're in the sales settings. And this is where a lot of our clients want us to go through and customize the look and the feel of our invoices and our sales receipts and things like that. So in here is where you can go through and customize those sales forms. So I'm going to go ahead and create, like, let's say, a new invoice. Out here, you're able to go in and customize the design. You can use a template. You can use your logo. You can choose your colors. And so you can kind of go through and do some of this customization. Then the content, what do you want to see as far as on the activity of it? You can customize those emails that you're sending out, so you can have a different email template for an invoice or an estimate or a sales receipt, so you can choose your message to your customers. And then also the payments. This is where we're going to talk about a little bit about getting paid online. You can sign up for QuickBooks Payments. Then when you send an email invoice to your customers or your clients, they can choose to either pay with a bank transfer, which is what I encourage them to do because it's free, or with a credit card. Again, in order to do this, you need to sign up for QuickBooks Payments and check that out. And there is a free version of QuickBooks Payments, so that's kind of nice. So you want to go through there and customize those templates for your clients as needed. I'm going to go ahead and go back to our company settings. So let me just go ahead and go back to the accountant settings. So yes, go through and customize those invoices for your clients. Then the sales form content. This is where you can go through and indicate what are the invoice terms, like instead of net 30, maybe you want to do net 10 or net 15. Do you want to print them later, send them later, or none? I usually put none because a lot of times I click save and send, and I'm going to go ahead and send it right then. But if you wanted to batch send them for some reason, you could, or if you're one of the, I guess maybe, I think over 65% now the small businesses are emailing invoices. But if you wanted to, you could still print those out and mail those, but very few people are doing that anymore. Everybody's starting to email those. So then also you can have a few custom fields that are going to show up on your templates or your invoices if you wanted to. For example, Craig's Design and Landscaping has the crew number, and he wants that crew number to show up internally as well as publicly on the invoice for the customers. Custom transaction numbers. Now, what QuickBooks will do is when you create an invoice, it will automatically create the first invoice number and keep numbering from there on, and you can't edit or change it. If you would like the ability to set the number and change the number and edit it as needed for your transactions, check that box. Otherwise, you can't edit or change those numbers. So usually people want to go ahead and check that box. Then also, this is something that's a little different between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. With QuickBooks Online, we have the ability to print the service date for each line of that invoice. So for example, we've got Craig's Design and Landscaping. Let's say Craig's is going out and mowing the grass every single week, and he might use something that's called a delayed charge, which means he can enter that he mowed the grass as a delayed charge. It won't actually post or affect his statements or anything, or his financial statements or anything, until he actually invoices for that delayed charge. So maybe he invoices at the end of the month. So he might want to show the service date to show each week when he mowed the grass, and then he's going to invoice at the end of the month. So you can have a service date for each line of the invoice, which is different from the invoice date. So that's kind of handy for some of our clients. Do you use a discount? Do you want to do deposits on the invoice? So those are some things you can customize. The products and services here, let's go ahead and save those changes. The products and services. Do you want to see that product or service column on your sales forms? In QuickBooks Desktop, we always had an item. In QuickBooks Online, a lot of times it's called an item or a product and services list. So you'll see both of those terms kind of used interchangeably. So do you want to see that product or service item on the sales form? Do you want to show the SKU numbers if you've got those for inventory or something? Do you want to track the quantity and the price and the rate? So for example, do you want to put, 5 hours at this much, or do you want to just put, setup and conversion, $1,000? Do you just want a fixed fee, or do you want to have that quantity and the price or rate there? Then this is where we actually turn on inventory. When we say track the inventory quantity on hand, that is turning on inventory. And we talked about this last time. I wanted to remind people that QuickBooks Desktop is average cost for inventory. Whereas QuickBooks Online, you have to have the FIFO, or I'm sorry, you have to have the Plus version of QuickBooks Online, and it is a FIFO basis. So make sure that you understand that. And if you have clients that are using inventory and you're converting, especially if you're converting from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online with inventory, I highly encourage you, I really recommend that you go under the advanced training materials. You don't have to be certified yet to access those training materials. And in Module 1, it's talking about complex conversions, and it goes over inventory in detail. So I encourage you to access those training materials to help you with that somewhat. All right? And somebody's asking about, can I load invoices created from a separate revenue system? There are lots of third-party apps that will allow you to do invoicing in that third-party app. A lot of them will integrate with QuickBooks Desktop. If it doesn't, there's apps that will create an integration from another system into QuickBooks Online. That is definitely beyond this fundamentals course, but it is a great question. And if you want to learn more about apps and things like that, that's also a great place where you can go post some of those questions. I've got a LinkedIn group and a QuickBooks Facebook group for QB Power Hour on Facebook. The LinkedIn group is Successful QuickBooks Consultants. You can go post some of those questions out in those social media groups and talk with your peers and get answers from your peers and things like that when you have some of the more kind of advanced questions. So I think that's great. All right, then here's where we have our default email messages. You can change the default messages to be whatever it is you want to be. And also I'd like to point out to you, I mentioned this a little bit ago, that you can have a different template for your different forms or templates here. So you can have a different wording for an invoice versus an estimate versus a sales receipt, things like that. So you can go in and customize that. And you can choose if you wanted to email you a copy, which I usually don't do that one. I usually do a BCC to a specific email address, not my normal email address, and you can set up a folder out there if you want to do that stuff. So if you want to get a copy of it, you can fill that information out there. All right? Then here's some of the reminders, the online delivery. With the online delivery, this is when you're emailing your invoice to your customers. I recommend that you email it as an HTML so it looks nice and pretty, and I also recommend that you uncheck this box. Don't attach that sales form as a PDF, because when they get the email, you want them to click the box where it says view the invoice, and then they can save it as a PDF or they can print it out. But if they click view invoice, it records the date and the time that they looked at that invoice. So you've got that along with the history of the invoice, so you know they got it and they looked at it. So that's kind of helpful. Then under statements, you can choose if you want to show the aging table at the bottom of the statements and how you want your statements to be. So that's kind of nice as well. Then we have some of our expenses settings and preferences, if you will, out here. So you'll want to go through and look at some of that for each of these. Okay, so let's see, we've got lots of questions out there. Will this session show us how to link Expensify to QuickBooks? No, we're not showing how to link Expensify into QuickBooks, but you could go to Expensify's website. They've got great information out there. This is on QuickBooks Online, the fundamentals, not third-party apps. Okay, so bills and expenses. This is where, see where it says show the items table on an expense and purchase form. Let me show you what that means, because a lot of people don't really kind of understand that. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my tab up there so I can leave the company settings open and go in here and show you. I'm just going to open, like, let's say a check. When you have an expense form, either a check, a bill, or an expense, you have two options. You have the account table right here, and you have the item table right here for your products and services. This is where I mentioned that these two names are kind of synonymous or synonyms. They mean the same thing, the items or the products and services. So if you want to see the items table, this part here, if you want to be able to assign an item on an expense form or a bill or a check, you have to check this box here, show the items table. If you don't, you'll just be able to assign it to an account. Like I could just assign it to job materials, expense account, if you will. Whereas down here, I could put the actual materials in if I'm wanting to track two-sided or double-sided items. And a lot of times people want to do that when they're working with some job costing clients because they like to run a P&L by item so they can see that item profitability. So again, you need to check the box here to see that. Then these next few here, you need to have QBO Plus for these. Do you want to track your expenses and items by customer? Do you need to make expenses and items billable? Do you want to do some of this reimbursable expenses or some job costing by customer? You can do basic job costing by customers. You can assign an expense to a customer or a sub-customer or a job, and then you can do a P&L by customer or by job, if you will. That is available with QBO Plus. However, when you process payroll, you can't allocate the costs to the jobs. So that's something to keep in mind. If you've got somebody that wants job costing with fully burdened labor with the payroll in the jobs, that's not available with QBO without doing some manual journal entries or looking for a third-party app for that. And then the billable expenses or reimbursable expenses. Again, this is available with QBO Plus, and you can go through here and set it up as needed. We also have purchase orders with QBO Plus. So with your purchase order, you can go in here and indicate whether you want to have purchase orders turned on or not. So you'd go through there and check out that information. You also can set some default emails with your purchases as well. Then we also have the Advanced Settings tab. So under the Advanced Settings tab is where we can go in and work with our chart of accounts. You can turn on the account numbers or you can leave them off. It's up to you. Discount account, what's your default for the discount, your billable expenses account. Then also in QBO Plus, we have two tracking categories. In Desktop Premier, we can track classes. In QuickBooks Online Plus, we can track classes and locations. So that's available with both of those there. Then also under the automation, in QuickBooks Desktop, we called this auto recall. Well, in QuickBooks Online, it's called pre-fill the forms with previously entered content. In other words, if I'm going to be putting in Cal Telephone and I enter that bill this month, do I want it to automatically recall when I put in Cal Telephone, do I want it to automatically recall things from the previous time I entered that? So do you want it to pre-fill those forms? Automatic applying credits or bill payments. When you're doing historical work and you're catching up for several months, let's say, or maybe a year's worth of activity, I recommend you uncheck these. Don't have it automatically apply things so you can control what's getting applied to what. Then once you're caught up, you may want to turn those back on. Do you want to automatically invoice unbilled activity, like billable time and expenses, or those delayed charges that I had mentioned? Do you want to automatically invoice for those things? Do you want to copy the estimate to the invoice? I don't know why you would ever create an estimate that you didn't want to copy to an invoice, but you'll want to make sure that you've checked this box here to copy that estimate to the invoice. Usually, yes, that's something you're going to want to do. Then once you get the estimate copied onto your invoice, you can change it or edit it as needed. You can change the quantities, you can add additional things to it, you can delete a line, so you can edit it on that invoice as needed. Are you using time tracking? Do you want to have your employees or your subcontractors enter their time so that then you can pull that in to create the paychecks? It won't allocate it to the jobs, but you can use it to create the paychecks. You can also use it to invoice customers or clients if it's billable time. So you could do that if you need to. Then also here's where if you're using QBO Essentials or Plus, you can turn on multi-currency. All right, so if you have clients that are, you know, they're receiving payments, maybe it's a U.S. client and they're getting paid from Canadian dollars and euros or the British pound, you could turn on multi-currency if you need to. Then here's a few other miscellaneous things that you can do with the dates and the numbers. Here's one thing that's kind of cool is on your customers, under this customer label, like for example, we're accounting professionals, we usually call ours clients. Maybe it's a nonprofit and they want to call theirs donors, or a membership organization, they might want to call it members, or a landlord with lots of tenants. So you can change that customer label to whichever one you're going to want to use it to. Another thing I usually like to do is I like to change this under 3 hours, or it's the default is to log you out after 1 hour of inactivity. I like to change that to 3 hours so it doesn't lock me out quite so much. So those are some of our basic settings. Let me go ahead now and show you, because that's in a sample company let me go into, here is a real company, a real fictitious company that we've created. Actually, let me go back in here and let's just open like Larry's Landscaping. So this is a sample company that we've created, but it's got a full account. So you will see all of the account settings versus under Craig's, you don't see, for example, the billing and subscriptions tab. This is where you're going to find their company ID number, which you do need when you're maybe calling into support or something. It will show you what subscription you have, the plan details, like here we're using QBL Plus, any information on the payroll subscription, the payments that they might have signed up for, and then checks or things like that. So that's into the billing and subscription. Then this is where you can sign up for QuickBooks Payments. This is where you can get paid online. So I'm just going to click on Learn More to show you real quickly. Under the QuickBooks Payments, you can come through and get free bank transfers. If your client enters their banking account information, it's free. Whether they pay you $50, $500, or $5,000, it's free. I absolutely love that. If you want to do credit card payments, you can also sign up for that. So you can go in and choose what you need, things like that. So if you want to get paid online, you'll want to click on Payments and click Learn More. And I absolutely love this. I don't like going to the bank anymore. I don't like getting paid with a check. Isn't that terrible? I like to be paid online because I think that's really great. Somebody says, how can I create a PO? We're going to talk about that on tomorrow, actually, part 3. You can create any transaction from this plus sign in the upper right corner. The plus sign is the quick create menu. That will allow you to create any transaction. All right, so purchase orders are under there as well. We're going to go through entering those transactions and the workflow and all this. That's part 3 tomorrow. And no, we're not going over classes, Kim. If you want more details on the differences between class tracking and location tracking, I really encourage you to go look at Module 2 of the advanced training materials. It goes over in detail the differences between class tracking and location tracking, because both of those are available for you, and both of them have some pros and cons. So again, you go into your ProAdvisor account, and Module 2 is where they'll go over the differences between class and location tracking. Is it free if the client's bank charges for transfers? Patricia, most banks don't charge. This is not a wire transfer. It's like an EFT payment. So most banks do not charge for that. So let's see. See if we got any. Okay. It was so that the customer had to click on it so you would get confirmation that they viewed it. Yes, so when you email an invoice, I don't check the box to attach it as a PDF. I want them to click View Invoice, because then you will have a record that they viewed that invoice and what time and date did they look at it. So they can't say they didn't get it. If it's attached as a PDF, they can just open that PDF, and if they don't click View Invoice, you don't know that they saw and looked at it. So QuickBooks Online will record the date and the date that it was sent, the date and the time that it was sent, and it will also record the date and the time that they looked at it if they click View Invoice. So I think that's great. Somebody says, quickly, can QuickBooks handle multiple entities and consolidated reports? Lance, that depends. If the company files if it's one entity, you can break things down with different classes and locations. If you have multiple entities with each of them filing their own tax returns, then you should have a separate subscription for each one of those, because in the event of an IRS audit, you don't want to expose them all. So each one would have its own subscription. So for consolidated reporting, I recommend a third-party app called Covinci, Q-V-I-N-C-I, Covinci, okay, Covinci. Does your QuickBooks ProAdvisor expire? Joseph, your ProAdvisor membership doesn't expire if you're a free member. If you're a paid member, you have to renew that every year. Your certification, you do need to renew every year, except for the advanced certification. All right, so let me go ahead and get back into some more of this now. We talked about our company settings and everything now. So again, we've set up our client. we started doing some of this customization for our clients. What are some of the other things that we're going to need to do for our client? I'm going to click on this big gear up here, and let me just share a funny story with you. So I told you guys I've had the privilege of traveling around all over the place teaching others about QuickBooks. So when I was down in Dallas one time, I had been talking about the big gear up here on this top, the gear, and I had a gentleman come up to me on the break, and he kind of puts his arm on my shoulder, and he says, "Hun, you're in Dallas now, and that there's a wagon wheel." I said, "Oh, it's a wagon wheel. Okay. Well, in all the training materials and all the exam, that's called a gear, but you can call it a wagon wheel if you want to." Somebody in Canada one time told me it was called a cog or a sprocket. So you can call it whatever you want to, but on the exam and in the training materials, that is the gear. And we typically call it the big gear because if you open like one of your centers over here, the customer center, the vendors, the employees, let me just show you this real quickly. Here is another gear. See right here, kind of right above that list on the right side? This is actually called the grid gear because this is a grid or all your information in grid format. So this we typically call like the little gear or the baby gear, and this is the big gear up here. So under the big gear, after you've set up the company and you've done some of your customizing and things like that, you may also want to go through and do some of your lists before you do this, but I'm going to go show you the list stuff in just a minute. But you would want to come in and manage the users. You need to invite your client as a user. This is if you've set them up. If your client was already using QuickBooks Online, they may have invited you as the accountant's user. So then you wouldn't have to do this. But if you've set this up for your client, after you go through and do all this customizing and getting things all set up and ready to go for them, you would want to come out here and click New to add your client as a user. And what you need to do is go through there, and it's a little slower than normal. Okay, that was not good. It popped up and went away. All right, here we go. So you would usually want to go through here. I usually make the client a company administrator. That means they can add and remove their own employees as users as needed. So they can kind of manage some of that and everything. So you can have yourself as the accounting firm, you can have admin access, and also the company, or the owner of the company, you could give them admin access as the company administrator. So you'd go through here and set this up, click next, you're going to put in there their email address and everything, then they will get an email confirmation and they accept that. That will put them out here as a user to give them access to that. Okay, so make sure that you do invite them as a user. One of the other things that you'll want to do is probably go in and customize that chart of accounts. You may need to add some new accounts, to edit some accounts, or if you're doing cleanup work, you may need to merge some accounts. So under the gear where it says chart of accounts, this is where you would go in, and if you put in there what industry type you are, and let me go back over to Craig's. I didn't realize I was still in Larry's landscaping. There's lots of crazy stuff over there because we all play with it. So let me go back into Craig's here. And under the gear, chart of accounts. So out here, this is where if you told it a particular industry, it probably set up a beginning chart of accounts for you. Or if you converted, it probably converted all of your accounts for you. So you can go through here and edit them, change them, merge them. And merging is something that's covered in the CERT, but I'll talk about it briefly. But first of all, let's talk about if you wanted to add a new account. So I'm going to go ahead and click on New. And under here is where you would choose your type of account, just like in QuickBooks Desktop. You know, it's your major assets, liabilities, equity, income, expenses, or other expense. So you would choose what type it is. Then this is something different in QuickBooks Online that's not in Desktop. What is the detail type? Now, this is where it's kind of silly because this used to be used for something called a scorecard, and I don't think that works anymore. So this really serves no purpose. It was a good idea, and it's left over from something that, like I said, I think it was for that company scorecard that's used to compare you to others in your industry, but that has been, it's gone now. So this actually serves no purpose at all. So you can choose whatever you want in here. Don't get all hung up about it. But the one thing I will say is if you're merging accounts, the detail type must match. So the detail type must match in order for you to merge them. But otherwise, this detail type, it doesn't impact your reports. It doesn't impact anything. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But then you can go in here and come out and give it a name, whatever you want. You can set things up as a sub-account, just like in QuickBooks Desktop. If you wanted to make things a sub-account, you could do that there as well, and then you can just save and close. So it's super easy to add an individual account. You also can import your chart of accounts from an Excel file if you'd like to do that. Then, like as you're working with your accounts, if you need to go through and edit something, let's say I wanted to come down here and change this instead of decks and patios, I just wanted to call it decks. I could click on this drop down over on the far right side, and I can click edit, and I could come in and change the name of that account, save and close. All right, so you can go through and edit, add a new account, edit things. You can also merge things. For example, if I wanted to merge fuel with automobile, what I want to do is I want to choose which one do I want to keep. Let's say I want to keep automobile. Then I'm going to go into fuel, edit that account, change the name so it matches exactly. So you may want to copy and paste to get it to match exactly. You also have to make sure the detail type matches exactly. Otherwise, it'll give you an error message that it's not the same detail type. You cannot merge them. When you go to click Save and Close, it should have said that it merged them. What did I do wrong? Let's go down and look under Expenses. It should give you something that says this name is already being used. Do you want to merge them? So I'm not sure what I did wrong. Let me go up here and click on the gear, and let's say Include Inactive. And let's search for auto, and there it is. Oh, you know what I did wrong? Let me make that go away. I have to edit this again. Look what I did wrong. I said it was a sub-account. I don't want to make it a sub-account. I wanted to merge it. So I just forgot to uncheck that box. Normally, you're not merging a sub-account with a main account. I just picked that as an example. Now, here's the little confirmation. This name is already being used. Do you want to merge them? Now, you can merge things on your chart of accounts, also on your customers and vendors. Let's say you have a vendor set up as, I don't know, you got two names that are close. You just set them up a little bit differently. You can merge them together. So not just on your accounts, but customers, vendors as well. You can merge list items. When you merge these, it takes all of the history from the one and merges it into the other. Whatever name you're calling it, merging it into will remain. So there is no undo button, so make sure you really want to do this before you click yes. And then it will take all of that history, put it into the main account here, and you'll see where automobile says deleted. Well, in QuickBooks Online, when you're working with your list, your chart of accounts, your customers, your vendors, your products and services list, all your lists, you don't really delete those things. You're making them inactive. So notice over here, instead of undelete, it says make active. So I could make that active again. And notice it wouldn't let it be the same name, so it gives it a -1. Because if it's the same name, it's going to be merging those. So you can see where it says right here on that drop-down list, delete, but I'm not truly deleting it. I'm making it inactive. And then I can reactivate that as needed. All right? Okay, let's go ahead and do another poll question here. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the second poll question. How do you identify yourself? Which designation applies to you? How do you delete an invoice that you no longer want? Rosalind, at the bottom of the invoice, if you click More, you can then click Delete. And you can delete an invoice or a transaction. Somebody says if you create a CSV file of customer sales, these can be imported into QuickBooks. If you need to import transactions, you're going to either need to import them or upload them as a bank or a credit card transaction, or if it's sales, you're going to need a third-party app to import transactions. Some of those third-party apps are called Transaction Pro Importer, and there's some other ones as well. So if you go to apps.com, you can look for those. When merging, is there any way to keep what was once two different companies under their unique history? I'm not talking about merging companies. You can merge a vendor. And no, once you merge them, it will combine all of that history into one. All right, so what you may want to do is if one of them you're no longer going to use, just make it inactive instead of merging them, because it will merge all that data together there. All right. Go ahead and answer this poll question. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds so that we can move along. So 10 more seconds. Go ahead and answer this poll question, and then we'll move along. You guys have great questions. Thank you. How do you enable the activity log from the Home tab? You don't enable the audit log. It's always on. You can't turn it off. So you don't need to enable it. It's always there, always on. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll question. I'll share the results. We got 51% of CPA. Awesome. 3% EAs, 25% bookkeeper, 2% QB consultant, and 19% other. Way to go. I am so glad to have all of you joining me. I know it's busy season, so I'm really glad to have you joining me for this webinar today to learn more about QuickBooks Online. So, very good. All right. We are back now. So we talked about the chart of accounts. Let's talk about some of the other lists that you might need to customize or things like that for your clients. So over here, you'll see where it says all lists. I'm going to go ahead and click on that so I can show you. This is where you'll see all of your lists. So we have a shortcut to chart of accounts, and we have a shortcut to products and services, and we also have one for recurring transactions, but not for our terms or our payment methods. So if you want to see all of your lists, you can click on all lists to see that. But what I wanted to get into was now let's go in and look at our products or services. And here's the shortcut to recurring transactions and attachments. But the products and services, these are the items that your clients are selling. All right, so these are the items that your clients are selling. So it's the products and services in QuickBooks Online. And instead of setting up a new one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just go into one of these, like let's say gardening here, and I'm going to edit one that's already set up. You give it a name. You can import a picture, particularly if you're working with inventory. It's nice to have that picture there, so you can have that. If you had a SKU number, you can put that out there. Your category, I sell this product most of the time. Yes, our products and services are things that we're selling to our customers. You can put a sales price or rate out here. You can override that. Let's just make it 100. We are an expensive gardener. You can overwrite that on the invoice if you need to. Is the item or the product or service taxable or not? Then this is where I mentioned earlier, two-sided or double-sided items. A lot of times if you've got people who are wanting to kind of track their profitability by item, you're going to want to turn on that I purchased this product or service from a vendor. It might be that, let's say I purchase QuickBooks Online, or I purchase QuickBooks and I pass it through to my client. Or maybe the gardener, he purchases the trees and the shrubs and he passes that through to his client. So it's not really inventory, but he's buying it and passing it through to his clients. Or in this situation, we're working with the landscaping services, the gardening services. I may be paying a subcontractor $50 an hour, and I may want to put this to job. Let's see if we just got job. Here we go, job expenses, cost of labor. So I can say I'm paying my subcontractor $50 an hour, but I'm charging my customers $100 an hour, so then I can customize a profit and loss and tell it I want to see my profit and loss by product or service. I can see my profitability by item. So if you want to do that, you want to make your items two-sided. If you're working with people that are doing job costing, which, by the way, job costing is not just for contractors, but think about this. If you've got somebody who's doing a catering company, they might want to do the job costing, the party planning. Maybe you've got somebody that's doing marketing and they're buying ad time or ad space or something. I mean, there's a lot of situations where you might want to be tracking the cost by job or by client or customer without just being construction. You know, architecture, maybe you want to do that. So all kinds of people might want to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click Save and Close. So that's your products and services list. You're going to want to go through and work with that as well. So you can go through there and do some of that stuff. All righty. Now, another thing that you're going to want to do, let me go back and pop into my slides, is set up your bank feed. All right, so first of all, we created the new subscription, or we converted from desktop or whatever. We went through and we customized our settings. We might have customized our chart of accounts, our products and services list. We invited the client as a user, maybe earlier. Maybe we still are waiting to set the rest of this up before we add the client. But we want to set up our bank feed. This is where we're going to link the bank and the credit card accounts to the online banking in QuickBooks Online. It will import the transactions that have cleared automatically, usually every night. And it's important to know that it downloads these as for review. It's all non-posting until you take action. It's not going to create duplicates. I have a lot of people say, but wait a minute, if I entered the invoice, received the payment, and I made the deposit in QuickBooks Online, now when I download that deposit, aren't I going to have duplicates? No, and the reason is you can choose with these downloaded transactions to either add them as a new transaction, like maybe credit cards or debit card purchases that have not been entered into QuickBooks. You want to add those as a new transaction, or you can match them like the deposit that came through and matches a deposit that you've already entered into QuickBooks. We also can do something called auto add. Like, for example, your utility bills, you can set them up to auto add. Let me show you all this in just a second, okay? And then the transactions become self-reconciling. When you go into reconcile the bank account, they're already marked off as cleared. So usually when you go into reconcile the account, all you have to do is put in there the statement ending date, ending balance, take a quick look. The difference is usually 0, and you click reconcile now. It takes like a minute or less. So I think that's awesome. Our imported transactions automatically coded. Stu, I'm going to show you how you can set up bank rules so it will automatically code them. So the first step, though, is we got to set up this bank feed. Okay, the first step is set up the bank feed. So you would go on the left navigation bar over here where it says Transactions and Banking to open up the banking window. And then you click on Add Account. And this is where we've already, usually you've already got that account set up in QuickBooks on the chart of accounts. Now we're adding the link from the bank account to QuickBooks so that it can download those transactions. All right, so we're going to click on Add Account, and we can then choose which account we want. So let's say, for example, in this particular bank, I may have several different accounts here. I might have a savings account, a checking account, I may have a business credit card, and I may have a personal credit card. So you've got to choose the right accounts that you want to set up. All right, and this is one of those situations where I usually do this with my clients using remote access because I don't want them to give me their account sign-on information, their username and password. So I usually walk through this with my clients so I can make sure they're choosing the right accounts. I don't want them to choose a personal account. We want to choose the business account. So then also I want to make sure that my client chooses the right period to download. The default is 90 days of transactions. If you need a shorter time period, for example, let's say I converted this client as of the end of February. So here we are, what is today, March 7th? Maybe I only need 7 days of transactions that I need to do. What would I do if today was March 11th? Maybe I need 11 days of transactions. There's no 11 here. In that case, what you would do is download more than you need. So for example, I would download 30 days. Then it's very quick and easy to batch exclude the additional days that you don't need and batch delete them. So you download more than you need because it's easier to exclude and delete them. We don't want to do manual data entry. There's very few reasons to do manual data entry anymore because we can download these transactions. Or what if I need more than 90 days? Let's say I need a whole year of activity. All right, then in that situation, what you do is you go out to the bank or the credit card website and you download transactions from the bank. So see, you're going to go over there and download the transactions from the bank. So right up here under this drop-down list, you'll see where it says File Upload. So after I've downloaded those transactions, I click on File Upload. I'm going to see this window where it says Select the file to upload. You can download these transactions as either a QuickBooks file, which will be .qbo, a Microsoft Money or a Quicken file, which are QFX and OFX files, or a CSV. You can import any one of those 4 file types into QuickBooks Online. So I recommend your first choice is QuickBooks if you can get it. If you can't get it, then either a Microsoft Money or a Quicken. Get those files. Your last choice would be CSV. And then you would choose that file to upload right here. So then it's going to say, okay, now here's the file that you said you wanted to upload. Which QuickBooks account do you want to upload that into? So you've got to make sure you get it into the right account in QuickBooks as well. Okay? So you go through and you set up all these bank feeds, and then we want to set up bank rules. Let's go in and take a look at this instead of just using slides now. I didn't want to show you guys my bank account or anything. Whoops. So that's why we went into the slides for that. So let me go ahead and go back to my home page over here, and you can see transactions. Here's where we have that banking tab. Okay, so right there is the banking tab. Somebody says, why is CSV as the last choice? Just because of the information that comes over and everything, QBO is going to be your best choice, and then the other two, and CSV doesn't always have as much information. Setting up a rule for something like Safeway. Yes, we're talking about setting up rules in just a moment. Okay, so first what I want to point out to you, here's a MasterCard account, a checking account, and a savings account. So here's the checking account with 25 transactions that have been downloaded. Notice how they're all sitting over here under For Review. They're sitting here under For Review so that they haven't added, they haven't matched, they haven't done anything. They're just waiting for me to do something with them. So these have been downloaded from the bank or the credit card account, waiting for us to do something. After we add them or match them, they move over to the In QuickBooks tab. Notice how this tab is actually empty right now. There's nothing under In QuickBooks. Same thing with excluded. There's nothing that's excluded right now. We're going to move these things over there. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my For Review tab, and I wanted to point out to you there's 14 transactions that are recognized. See this in the green right here? 14 that are recognized. I'm going to go ahead and click on Recognize so I can see all those that are recognized. I'm going to work with those first. Notice how it's matching a deposit or a check or a bill payment or a regular payment. It might have matched a sales receipt or an expense. QuickBooks will look for the exact same amount. So it's downloaded these transactions. It looks in QuickBooks and says, is there the exact same amount in QuickBooks around the same date? If so, I think these are a match. In other words, you've already entered it in QuickBooks. Now it's cleared the bank or the credit card, and it's coming through. So it's cleared the bank, and it's coming through, and it's saying, aha, you've already entered this deposit in QuickBooks Online, and now it's cleared the bank. We think this is a match. So it will suggest a match for you, and you can then review those and say, yep, all those look good. So I'm going to select up here at the top to select all. Then I can choose Batch Actions Except Selected. What this is going to do is that's going to match the downloaded transaction to the one that we've already entered into QuickBooks, and it's going to move it over to In QuickBooks. See now under In QuickBooks, remember this was blank just a minute ago? Now I've got all these that are matched over here, and I quickly went from 25 transactions down to 11. Now let's go back and look at For Review, and we have two more that were recognized that weren't listed on that first page. Notice how we have a bill payment, and then notice how the second one, legal and professional fees, it's not saying that it's a match, but it's in green and it's coming up as recognized. What this is saying is last time we had something come through with a description of Books by Bessie, we posted it to the payee name Pam site and legal and professional fees. It's thinking you might want to do this again. So perhaps this was an online payment that we made to her. So notice over here on the far right, the first one says match, the second one says add. I haven't entered it into QuickBooks yet. It's come through as like an online payment that I might have made. And so it's coming through and saying, do you want to add this? This is going to post it as a new transaction as opposed to matching it to an existing transaction. So again, I could choose both of those and do a batch except. That again moves them over to In QuickBooks. Now back over on For Review, you're going to also notice a gray match out here. See Squeaky Clean Car Wash? If I click on that, it will open up the details for that transaction. So under the details, you'll see there's two possible matches. Both of them are $19.99, and they're within about a week of each other. So QuickBooks is saying, we think this is a match, but we're not sure which one this should be matched to. So you can choose which one you want it to be matched to, and then go ahead and click on Match. All right? Now, the other thing that you might want to do is set up bank rules, because this saves lots of time for us, massive amounts of time. First of all, we save a lot of time with the downloaded transactions. But when we save bank rules, we save massive amounts of time. Especially, think about something like your utility bill. Let's say the water bill. It's not the same amount every month. It's usually a little bit different, give or take. But we don't really need to review the water bill or the electric bill or the trash, you know, or some of those things that are every single month. Or let's say your clients are always going to, you know, certain places for gas, like let's say, you know, the Quick Trip store for gas or something. You can set up bank rules so that it will automatically assign it to whichever account you specify. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a bank rule for A rental. I want you to notice that A rental, there are two. Let me show up the top here. Whoops. A rental, there are two of them down on the very bottom where it says A rental where we spent money, $1,200 and $800. So let's say we rent from A rental all the time, and we want to set up a bank rule for them. What you do is you come up next to update in the upper right corner on that drop down, and you're going to click on manage rules, okay? Manage rules, okay? And somebody says, when you download from the bank, what is it matching to? Are we recording each transaction in QuickBooks first, then downloading from the bank to reconcile? And it depends. Sometimes you are going to enter the transactions in QuickBooks first and then let it match when it downloads from the bank. For example, you enter your invoices, you receive payments from 3 or 4 different people, and you make the deposit to make one deposit. Then that would be matched downloading it from the bank to the deposit that you've already entered. If you've got lots of debit card purchases, lots of credit card purchases, do not enter those manually in QuickBooks. Download them from the bank. It's going to save you lots of time. So it depends on the situation and your clients and how they're operating, whether you're going to download and add them or download and match them. And you may be doing some of both. You know, sometimes you're matching, sometimes you're adding, just depending on the transaction. So let's set up a new rule for that A rental. So I'm going to click on new rule, and my rule name is going to be A rental. And I can make it for money in or money out. I can choose in one particular bank account or in all bank accounts. When the transaction meets any or all of these conditions, I'm going to say all. When the bank text contains. Do not say, oh, it doesn't even have is exactly anymore. Great. So when the bank text contains, I'm going to say A rental. The reason we do the contains is because you might have store number something, 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 or it may have all these other little numbers out there. So you just want to focus on the main part. So I'm going to say when the bank text contains A rental. I want to also add a line when the amount is greater than a certain amount. I'm going to say $1,000 because we had one for $800 and one for $1,200. But for example, if you're doing this for, let's say, the electric bill, you may want to say, like for me, I would say the bank text contains KCP&L, and when the amount is less than, let's say that the electric bill is always less than $1,000. If it's more than that, we want to review it because something could be wrong. So these rules can be used to set up things so that you automatically then choose what transaction type do you want it to be. I'm going to choose an expense. My payee, I want it to be Ellis Equipment Rental, and I want it to go to the Equipment Rental Expense account. I could split this if I wanted to. Maybe I wanted to do part of it, let's say it's a loan payment, part of it principal, part of it interest. Let's say it's part personal, part business. So you can split things by a dollar amount or by a percentage amount, depending on what you need. So you can get pretty powerful with these bank rules. Then this is what I love. Automatically add this to my books. Instead of it sitting under recognized transactions, you can tell it, you know what, I don't need to review the rent payment or the loan payment or the water bill or the electric bill or every time my client goes and gets gas. You know, as long as the gas, let's say, is less than $75, you can just go ahead and post it to, you know, fuel expense. So you can tell it to automatically add this to my books, saving big, huge amounts of time. Now, when I save that, notice this little thing here where it says auto add. You're going to see that icon when it auto adds something. So let's go back now and look at our downloaded transactions, and you'll see here for this A rental, the one that was $800, it was less than $1,000. So it's still sitting here, but it's saying, hey, we think this is a, you know, something that you did last time. You know, you put it to equipment rental. Do you want to do that again? And you could change that if you wanted to. So you could come in and change it if you needed to. The other one, under the In QuickBooks tab, it was over the amount, so it automatically added it for us. So I don't have to look at it or mess with it at all. If there's something wrong, you can always come over here and click Undo. That will move it back over to the For Review tab. As a matter of fact, too, let's talk about if we downloaded more than we need. I would go ahead and sort these by date. And let's say I don't need all of these January through February. Let's pretend I don't need any of these transactions because I converted my QuickBooks desktop file at the end of February. We already had these transactions. I downloaded them and I don't really need them. So I'm going to choose the transactions that I don't need because they're already in QuickBooks. Batch, exclude those transactions. Now it moves them over here to the excluded tab, where under excluded I could do a batch, select them all, batch, delete, and make them be gone, permanently gone. Bam, they're gone. So that's where I told you if you need a different number of days, like let's say we needed 11 or 14 days, and that's not a choice. You download more than you need, and then it's really super quick and easy to go in and batch exclude and then batch delete those transactions. Now, once you've gone through and you've worked with your downloaded transactions and everything, and so on this last one here, this Ellis equipment rental, we got $200 back. Let's say we wanted that to go to the equipment rental expense account. So you can go ahead and, because we got a refund, let's say, if you click on that transaction name, the drop-down will pop up where you can go through and specify where you want it to go. For things that didn't have a rule or they weren't added or matched, you can then assign whichever expense account you want it to go to. You can also add an attachment right here. If I had class and location tracking turned on, I could assign that out here. If it was money spent, I could assign that to a customer. If I've got QBO Plus, I could split this between multiple accounts if I need to. So you can go through here and quickly add that transaction. Here's another one, Books by Bessie. That again is uncategorized income. I could go through here and choose where I wanted that to go to. Let's say there was a refund of some of my legal and professional fees, and I could go ahead and add that one. So notice how quick it is to go from 25 transactions to none. And I did a lot of explaining through there, right? So once we're done with all this, at the end of the month when we're ready to reconcile, if you click on that gear and select reconcile, this will allow me to quickly come in here and I'm going to choose the checking account, reconcile now. I have to put in my statement ending date, 02/28/2017, and a statement ending balance, and I'm just making something up. Obviously, you would put in the right information, right? I just put in 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where, notice these icons are kind of the green, the two little green things, and checked off as being cleared. So after you start working with these downloaded transactions, normally when you come in to reconcile your account, and remember this is a sample file, so it's not showing what you would probably see. Normally you come out here and things are already checked off as having cleared, and your difference will be 0. All you have to do is say finish now to go ahead and reconcile that account. How cool is that? Right? I think that's super cool. Now, let me share one thing with you, and this is a little bit more advanced, not necessarily fundamentals. Under Finish Now, because I didn't balance, it says you have a difference. If you want us to fix this for you, we can do that. We'll go ahead and force it to balance, and it's going to post it to reconciliation discrepancies. And the client might be looking at this and says, oh, okay, well, the big blue button says add the adjustment, so yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. Woohoo! Look how easy it is to reconcile my bank account. I just love that, right? Do you have clients that do that? Yes. They force the bank reconciliation. The good news is it's going to show us that right over here under this auto adjustments column. So I'm in the reconciliation history window. So I clicked on the gear reconcile. So it's my reconciliation history and my reports. Over here under the auto adjustments column, it will show me when my client forced the bank reconciliation, and it goes into reconciliation discrepancies. Now, I had a client, I should say, actually, let me go ahead and launch the poll question while I give you this story. So I'll go ahead and launch your poll questionnaire. Are you enrolled in one of the QuickBooks Pro Advisor programs? Okay, so here's the story about my former client, I should say, David. So David used to force the bank rec all the time, and I'd call him out and say, David, you cannot do that. Why are you forcing the bank rec? I've told you you've got to reconcile. If you get under $5, I might let you get by with it, right? But you've got to reconcile. And he kept doing it, and he knew he was going to get a call from me, and I was going to yell at him about it. So one month, he thought he was pretty smart. He went in and he found that transaction in the check register, and he went out there and he changed it from reconciliation discrepancies account, he changed it to office supplies. He thought I wouldn't find it or I wouldn't know about it. So I called him up. I said, David, you did it again. He's like, how did you know? I said, I've told you I know everything. You can't get away with that stuff. And the reason I knew was because QuickBooks, under the auto adjustment, will still show you, even if the little rascal changes it from reconciliation discrepancies to another account, it still shows under that auto adjustment column. So I absolutely love that. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right, go ahead and answer that question. You got about 10 more seconds. Somebody says, is there a way to add multiple PayPal accounts? It seems to only allow one. Paul, I think you're right that with QuickBooks, you can only add one PayPal account, but I'm not positive. If you had multiple sign-ons for the PayPal accounts, it seems like you could set up multiple accounts in QuickBooks Online and then set them up with the different sign-in information for the different PayPal accounts. It seems like you could do that, but I've never tried it, so I don't know for sure. There are also some third-party PayPal apps, I believe. If you go to apps.com, I believe there's some apps out there that might help you with that, okay? Hope to get a link. A bit too fast for me. Yes, it is a little fast, Clara. It is a fundamentals course, and I did allow a good 15 minutes for questions at the end. So I will go back over things that some of you want me to go back over, but it is being recorded, so that you will be able to watch it again. But yes, I have allowed, I plan to get finished here in about 15 minutes, so that I have 15 minutes left for questions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that poll question. And so this is interesting. 60% of you are not a member of the Pro Advisor program. So this is my personal opinion. It is free to join the Pro Advisor program. So I encourage you, it's free for QuickBooks Online. You get QuickBooks Online Accountant for free, you get the training for free, the certification for free, the support for free. I encourage you to join the Pro Advisor program for QuickBooks Online. If you're an accounting professional who works with multiple clients, so if you're an accountant or a bookkeeper or tax professional or a consultant working with multiple clients, you can sign up for the Pro Advisor program for QuickBooks Online for free. I encourage you to do that. And we talked more about the Pro Advisor program last time. And as a matter of fact, last week or 2 weeks ago, on our last QB Power Hour, we covered the details and the benefits of the Pro Advisor program with someone from Intuit, and we talked about the Find a Pro Advisor website, how to maximize your profile. I will be uploading that video to my YouTube channel later today. So if you go to YouTube and look for Michelle Long CPA, you will find that and a lot of other videos out there as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that poll question. Thank you, guys. You should now be back to seeing my screen. Hide the results. There we go. I'm not sure if I shared the results or not. Maybe I did just really quickly. Sorry about that. Okay, what is the date and time of the QB Power Hour? Miriam, it is every other Thursday, so our next one is going to be March 16th, and it is at noon Eastern Time. So every other Thursday most of the time. For example, Thursday, April 13th, we're going to skip and go to April 30th because we know with the tax deadline, we're skipping that week. So QBPowerHour.com is where you can find that information. If I missed last week's program, how can I receive it to review? There's the link to that recording, and I'm going to be uploading that to my YouTube channel as well. All right, so let me go ahead and finish up here because we've got a few more things that I have to cover, and then like I said, I've got a good 10 to 15 minutes of question time for the end. So if you want me to go back over something, you can let me know that, but again, you'll get the recording so you can go back over that as well if you need to. All right, okay, so we talked about our bank rules. Now we want to talk about payroll because this is something else. Again, if you're setting up the books and everything for your clients, you may want to go ahead and set up the payroll. So on the left navigation bar under employees, you would click over here on the right, turn on payroll. Now, when you do this, it's going to give you a little wizard, and it's going to say, how have you been doing your payroll so far? It wants to know, did you pay employees this year? So if you're setting up here in March, have you already paid employees? And this shows 2016, but it would now show 2017. Did you pay employees? Do you pay contractors? Do you pay did an accountant or somebody else do the payroll for you? So you'll answer some of these general questions, and it's going to be recommending kind of which payroll might be right for you and what you need to do with the setup. And in choosing which payroll is right for you or your clients here, what you want to do is decide who's doing what. Do you want to do payroll yourself? Now with this, it might be you and your clients. Maybe you go through and you do the payroll setup for the client, and then the client enters the hours and runs the paychecks, but then each month or each quarter, you're filing the reports, you're doing the tax deposits filing, you're e-filing. At year end, you do the W-2s and the annual reports for them. So you may be doing that with your client. That's under doing it myself, you and the client together, or you may be doing it all for the client, kind of depending on the situation between you and your client. Or there's full service payroll. I want payroll done for me. In this situation, your clients are going to be entering the hours. Intuit does everything else. Intuit will help set up the payroll, including mid-year conversion. If you need to enter year-to-date stuff, converting from something else mid-year, they will help with the conversion and the setup. They will process the tax deposits, the tax filings, the year-end reports, everything, full service payroll. One thing I might also add is, as a member of the Pro Advisor program, you get a free payroll subscription for your books. Remember I told you get a free QBOA under your books? We talked about that last time. You also get a free subscription to pay your firm's employees. You can use the full service payroll if you want to. So that's something to keep in mind as well. You may want to do that. Okay. Then after, if you're doing the setup, so QuickBooks, you didn't sign up for the QuickBooks full service payroll, but rather you or your clients are going to be doing it, either you totally or you and your clients together, you'll need to go through and do the setup for the company. So you're going to need to enter the company name and the payroll bank account where the money's going to be swept out of. You're going to need to enter all this information. The next step would be to go through and do the employee setup. As you follow this, there's a wizard that's going to walk you across. The employee aspect of things, the compliance with all your federal and your state and your workers' comp, and entering all that information. You're going to be going through and entering account numbers and filing dates and things like that. And then finally, you'll verify it and sign it and things like that. So it will walk you through the setup process for this company, okay? So it has this payroll wizard walking you through that. Now, before I continue on, let me just go in here and show you, for example, under Larry's landscaping, under employees, we have already turned on payroll. After you've turned on payroll, this is where under the gear, you will see payroll settings. All right, you're not going to see this in that Craig's Design and Landscaping because payroll's not turned on. But once you've turned it on, you're going to see this under the payroll settings. This is where you're able to go through under the preferences and make any changes that you need to. So like here's your setup overview. We talked about the payroll, setting up the basics of the payroll, the taxes, some accounting preferences. Where do you want things posted, to which accounts? You got to set up your e-file services, your pay policies, how often, the tax setups, deductions, preferences. You can come in here and edit and revise this information as needed. Okay, but that's something that we usually do for the client. We don't usually have the client going through and doing the payroll setup unless they have people on staff that understand and know payroll. All right, so now I've left the last like 10 to 15 minutes here for some questions and things that you might want me to go back through. So if you have some specific things, and for my Intuit helpers, if you could flag things if you need to, that would be great. Flag things that you might want me to go back over to answer again. I see a couple flags. Let me find those. Whoops, I just went past one. Is there a way? Okay, I already answered that one. So yeah, if you have something you want me to go back over again, go ahead and do that. How can you add the past date payroll that hasn't been paid? All right, so you have unpaid payroll from a prior period? Because like normally if you're converting, you would choose, the end of a particular, I usually recommend if you're converting that you convert at the end of a month. So it would convert the payroll that was already paid previously. That's part of that conversion process. So I'm not real clear on what you're trying to do there. Is there a Pro Advisor program for QuickBooks Desktop users for Mac? So the Pro Advisor program is intended for accounting professionals, accountants and bookkeepers who are working with multiple clients. There are 3 levels of this. We talked about it last time. If you have clients that are using QuickBooks for Mac and you want to be able to get the Mac software and the Mac support, you're going to sign up for the Premium Pro Advisor program, which is $550. Okay? So there's 3 levels of the Pro Advisor program depending on what you need to serve your clients. If you need QuickBooks Mac, the software, and the support, that's part of the premium program along with enterprise and point of sale, and that's $550. So you can find out all of that if you go to QuickBooks.com, and under the accountant's menu you'll see Pro Advisor program, and you can learn more about that. All right? Okay, will you be discussing reports in tomorrow's session? I will mention reports briefly. Those are covered a little bit more in the QuickBooks certification, and then a lot of the customization and more in-depth on getting very specific reports is covered under the advanced module, in the advanced certification. I believe it's module 4 is reporting, module 4 or 5. If you had a specific report, we could try to answer that for you. How do you undo a client's bank rec? Oh, Lorraine, that's great. I think I mentioned it, but I'm not sure I showed you that. So when you're in the reconciliation window, if you hover to that line, all right, so let's say I had 6 months here, you go to the oldest one that you want to undo, and over to the far right, you'll see it says undo. You can undo from the oldest one forward. This is one reason why this is only available for us when we're logged in as the accountant user. We have access to undo, our client doesn't, because our client could go to like 12 months ago and click undo, and in one click they could undo 12 months of reconciliations. Oops. We don't want that to happen. So that's available to us when we're logged in as the accountant's user. I know I'm logged in as the accountant's user because in the upper left corner, kind of in this gray, black and white kind of, it says accountants. That's how I know I'm logged in as the accountant user. Okay. Can commissions be calculated in QBO? Julie, not very easy. There are some workarounds for that, but a lot of times, and there will be some workarounds coming in the updated advanced cert materials, some workarounds, but it might be more efficient to just use a third-party app for commissions. So you might want to go to apps.com to kind of check that out. All right, here's a good question. If our office does payroll for a client on our desktop QuickBooks for a fee, do they have to have a payroll subscription to core payroll and liabilities in their QuickBooks Online? So I'm kind of confused, Kathleen. It sounds like you're going to be doing payroll in QuickBooks Desktop, and then you want to enter it into QuickBooks Online. I'm not sure why you would do that. I would go ahead and just start doing the payroll in QuickBooks Online. So yes, you would have a subscription for that. Otherwise, I think what you'd have to do is enter journal entries to record the payroll, just like you're recording it from a third-party provider. Somebody says, does Intuit have an email server built in so that we can contact clients directly from the account? Tim, you can send invoices, you can send statements, you can send a purchase order, you can send reminders, you can do all kinds of that stuff. But if you just wanted to email the client and say, hey, let's meet tomorrow at 2 o'clock, that's not available. But it is really nice, though. Like if you've emailed an invoice to the clients, they can then click to reply and send you a message that says, how come the invoice was this much? I thought you said it was going to be, 200 instead of 250, and you can reply. All of that messaging is going to be right there on the invoice for you, and that's covered in some of the cert prep stuff. So that's kind of cool. Oh, well, thank you. Kathleen says I'm a great teacher. Well, thank you, thank you. Ooh, this is bad, and I don't know the answer to this. I'm going to let one of the customer care people. What happens if there isn't enough money in the bank account when using full service payroll? I'm not sure about that. I'll let one of the support ladies answer that one for me today. We have 3 women helping us from Intuit Customer Care. Brianna, Leah, and Sally, thank you all for helping us today. I'll see if one of those can do that. Is there automatic greetings on the emails? You can customize those email templates. Would cash basis accounting download credit card expenses or only when a card is paid? Kim, that is a great question because let me go back into the transactions area. Really, when you're working with a credit card, like here's MasterCard, The IRS says when you charge it, it's considered paid, because now it's really a loan. They don't know if you're going to pay that credit card bill this month and pay it in full, or are you going to pay that credit card bill, like let's say you went and spent $2,000 on computer equipment and stuff, are you going to pay the minimum payment like forever, like over the next 10 years? So it's considered an expense when it's paid, because then it's kind of a loan or a liability. So you download those bank and credit card transactions as they're coming through, you go ahead and code them as needed. So that was a great question there. That makes sense. Yes. All right. So had a few questions about reports. So let me just go ahead and come over here to reports for just a minute. And I believe I'm in Craig's. Let's go ahead and create quickly a profit and loss and see. Yeah, I'm still in Craig's design. So under the reports, let's go back into reports. I'll just quickly go over this. You've got recommended reports. All reports is where you'll find your various groups of reports. You've got business overview reports, which is going to give you your P&L, your balance sheet, some of those things. We also then, when we're working with money in, and I'll mention this more next week, you've got accounts receivable reports as well as sales reports. We have accounts payable reports and expenses and purchases. Normally, I might see payroll reports and budget reports down here. Notice how I don't see any payroll or budget reports, but if I pop back over here into Larry's landscaping, let's go into Larry's landscaping under all reports. Now, see, I have managed payroll and manage products and inventory. I still don't have a budget report because we haven't created a budget. But you have to turn on some of these features to see that. So right here I see manage payroll, and I also see products and inventory because I've turned on inventory. Under the business overview, as I come in here and I look around, I will see a P&L by class and a P&L by location. And here's some of my budget reports. Budget overview, budget versus actual. P&L by class and location and budget, when I go back into Craig's landscaping and I click on my business overview reports and I scroll down, I don't see P&L by class or location or those budget reports. I haven't created the class or a location, or I haven't created a budget. I haven't turned on payroll. So you may not see some of those reports if you haven't turned on or enabled those features yet. All right, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Also on the P&L, you don't see a P&L by customer or by product or service, but you create a profit and loss. Then you can come in here and say display my columns by customer or by product and service. All right, so I could create a P&L by customer just by changing my columns to by customer. And now I've got it by customer. I could further customize and filter for one in particular customer if I wanted to. So this would show me your income and expenses for your customers, or again, by product or service. If you have clients that are wanting to track their profitability by product or service item, this would show the income and the expenses to show their profitability by item. All right, so there's lots of reports that you can get out here. We'll talk next time about getting some additional reports, like under the sales center or the customer center and some things like that. All right, so let's look and see if there's anything else that we're wanting to cover. Let's scroll down just a little bit. Sorry, you guys, thank you for asking all these great questions. There's a lot of them out here. Let's see what we can find. Can you print a payroll summary? Yes, there's a payroll summary report out there. Is there something like assisted payroll? There's an enhanced payroll or the full service. Assisted is kind of gone now, Leah, or you might want to look at the full service. All right. How would you create a report of transactions for a loan for a mortgage company? Use each loan as a product. No, if I need a transaction report for a loan, you could go out there and do transaction by account, or you could just go to your chart of accounts and go out there and take a look and see what you got. But if you go into your under all reports, go in and I would say review expenses and purchases, because that's a payment that you've been making. Transaction list either by vendor or under the accountant reports. I believe that's where, whoops, I skipped out of my reports. I believe that's where you're going to see that transaction list by, or transaction detail by account right here, so you can filter for that loan account and get just that information that you need, okay? Darla's wanting to know what modules cover what tests. Darla, that is covered in the certification prep, I believe, but if you're ready to write, I will tell you, so write these down quickly. Okay, Module 1 of the Pro Advisor test is, or Section 1 is 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so let me just show you this so I don't confuse y'all. All right, let me go through this together with you. Oh no, it logged me out. That's okay, I'll go over here to this one. So under your Pro Advisor, there are 12 modules that you're studying, but there's 5 parts to the test. So under the Pro Advisor area, click on Pro Advisor when you're in your QBOA. Under Pro Advisor, under the online, you'll see there's 12 modules out here. Modules 1, 2, and 3 are Section 1 of the exam. 4, 5, and 6 are Section 2. 7, 8, and 9 are Section 3. Section 4 is Module 10. QBOA is one all by itself. That's Section 4 of the exam is Module 10, and then 11 and 12 are Section 5. So the first 3 are 3 sections each, or 3 modules each, and then it changes up just a little bit here on Modules 4 and 5. And I believe that's covered in the CERT prep as you're going through that. Oh, this is great. What do you feel is the major advantage to QuickBooks Online as compared to desktop? This seems very different and confusing compared to the regular QuickBooks. You know what? I thought the same thing. I am a longtime desktop user, and when I first started using QuickBooks Online, I thought, oh my gosh, I hate this. I don't know how to do open windows. I want my icon bar back. I don't know how to do this, that, or the other. Where's my keyboard shortcuts? You can do all of that. Join me tomorrow where I will show you how to do the tabbed browsing. For example, if I go back into, let me go back into a client here. If I go back into a client like Larry's Landscaping, it is very easy to have multiple tabs or open windows in there. So I could, for example, open my customer list, open my vendor list. I could open a profit and loss report on another tab. And so here I have reports. Here's my customers. Here's my vendors. Here's my P&L. I can drag and drop, put these on different screens, and you guys are going, whoa, how did you do that? That's awesome. You're right, it is. Join me tomorrow, and I'll show you. I'll also show you how you can create this one-click icon bar. Instead of going to the gear, click on Reconcile, I can just come up here and click on Reconcile. One click takes me right in where I want to go. Same thing with my chart of accounts or the banking area. I will be showing you how to do those navigating tips and tricks tomorrow. The other things that I love about QBO that you can't do in QuickBooks Desktop, you can not only create a recurring invoice, you can have it automatically email to your clients. I love that. You can set up a group of reports to automatically send. Let's say to your clients, you want to send them the collections report every week. Set it up. It will automatically email that information. There's a lot of really cool things that we can do in QuickBooks Online that are not available in desktop. You also have keyboard shortcuts. Once I learned more about QuickBooks Online and I learned how to use these navigating tips and tricks and things like that, I now love QuickBooks Online and I much prefer it to QuickBooks Desktop. When I work in QuickBooks Desktop now, it seems clunky and dated to me. So I encourage you to join me tomorrow. That's a sneak peek of some of the navigating tips and tricks. Let me cover these last few slides, then I will do the last poll question for you. If you need support, we've got our customer care team. They are wonderful down in Tucson, Arizona. Again, thank you for them to helping me answer questions today. Remember, make sure you join the check the QBO blog on a regular basis for updates to QuickBooks Online. Then also, tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the transactions and the workflow for our expenses and purchasing. We're going to talk about on the sales and the money inside. I will tell you about that efficient browser use, how to do the tabbed browsing or the multiple windows, create that icon bar, things like that. We'll talk about running payroll, reconciliations, and a little bit more about reports, as well as the mobile and desktop apps. So I hope that you're going to join me tomorrow, same time, same place. Then I also encourage you, if you haven't done it already, if you work with multiple clients, sign up for QuickBooks Online Accountant. It's free for us, and it also signs you up for the Pro Advisor program when you do that. Complete the fundamentals training by joining me tomorrow for part 3. Get QBO certified. After you finish this fundamentals, continue your training. Go next to the certification prep. They're going to go over a lot of the same things with you, as well as some new and different materials with you to get you prepared for that exam. Start getting your first 3 clients to help get you familiar with QuickBooks Online. Don't forget to check out QuickBooksTrainingEvents.com. The live training tour will begin again in May in various cities across the U.S., but there's always live webinars every single month and every single week even at QuickBooksTrainingEvents.com. It's always free. Most of them have CPE credits. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do our final poll question. Whoops, I was getting back into QuickBooks. Let's go ahead and launch that final poll question there. Those of you that have to jump off, I will stay for just a couple more minutes to finish this poll question and then answer any other questions that we need to. All right, so very good. Thank you, Michelle. I always try to catch webinars of all QuickBooks Online because I always pick up a few things. Awesome. Love QBO. Trying to get clients to go straight to QBO. Skip the desktop. Absolutely, Shannon. I agree with you on that. So thank you very much. I agree with you. The more I learn about QuickBooks Online, the more I love it. I don't use QuickBooks Desktop much at all anymore. So that's something there. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions that I need to answer. If you had any last questions, can I use both QB Online and Desktop? Not for the same client at the same time. Usually you convert from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. You might continue to do things in both for the first month, running them in parallel. So you would enter all the transactions into both Desktop and Online to make sure everything is working right and good to go. But then eventually you quit using Desktop and you continue using QuickBooks Online. You don't go back and forth between them. You don't use both. All right? You kind of choose either or. All right? What time is the webinar tomorrow? It is at noon Eastern. No, wait. It's noon Central. That would be 11 Eastern. Same time as today's. All right. Somebody says, I've spent so much money on Desktop and I'm just so happy to find this. Honestly, it was a waste of so much money in my case. Yeah, you know, I love QuickBooks Online. So why I love Desktop Online. Well, you know what? I love Desktop so much because that's what I started with. I started teaching QuickBooks Desktop. I was using it before, but I started teaching it in 1999. So I knew it. I was familiar with it. I knew my keyboard shortcuts. I knew how to move it around. When I first started using QuickBooks Online, it was a kind of a little different. And, you know, things were just a little different. I had different keyboard shortcuts, a different way to do my open Windows list, a different way to create my icon bar. Once I learned those things and I learned how to work in a browser, now I love QuickBooks Online. But there was, you know, it was a little conversion period there. It wasn't very long, but there was a little bit of a conversion there. All right. So this is great. Most of my clients don't want to do anything but have me do it all. Can I still set up a client's account and do things like their payroll? Absolutely, Nancy. And the other thing that you do, if they're using QBO Plus, you can set them up as a reports-only user so they can get in and run reports and not mess anything up. Let them look, but don't touch. All right, you got your last few seconds here on this last poll question. I'll give you about 10 more seconds. So last call. All right, is there any way to back up if you want to practice with transaction uploads? Denise, I recommend you practice with that Craig's sample company. Every time you log out, it wipes out anything you did. Nothing will be saved. So I would practice uploading things into Craig's design, all right? Where can you go to see pre-recorded webinars? April, the one from yesterday or last week, the link was posted previously. I'm going to be uploading that to my YouTube channel this afternoon. So on YouTube, I am Michelle Long CPA. I would love you to just subscribe to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my blog, all right? So my YouTube is Michelle Long CPA. And the blog, if you want to, is Long for Success at Long for Success / blog. Long for Success / blog. All right, so you guys were very great today. We've covered quite a bit. Don't forget the CPE will be followed up to you within 3 weeks after the training, and keep a copy for your records. I want to thank you, and I hope to see you guys again tomorrow for part 3 of this. All right? And one more question, can you practice with the conversion tool without having an online account for a company? Samir, you're going to need to set up a free subscription. Go to QuickBooks.com and set up a 30-day free trial. You have to have a subscription to convert. All right? You can reconvert too. So, all right, how do you get credit for part 1 if you missed it? Benny, you would have to be attending a live webinar, so go to QuickBooksTrainingEvents.com. QuickBooksTrainingEvents.com. Sign up for another live webinar there to get CPE credits. All right? Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you guys tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a great day. Talk to you all later. Bye, everybody.